right now we're pleased to be joined by Ben Volan of the Boston Globe because, again, as Sunday's slate of Week 18 ball games wrapped up, we got word that Robert Kraft of the New England Patriots had pulled the plug on first-year coach Gerard Mayo after one season, and it seemed to be met with a lot of the same type surprise that we have had this morning with the announcement of Ran Carthon being dismissed by the Tennessee Titans. But Ben, first of all, welcome to the show and thank you for taking some time with us. Second, was this a surprise on the ground to the degree that it was across the league?
I'd say the biggest surprise for me, and thank you for having me on today, the biggest surprise for me is the swiftness in which it happened. About 80 minutes after the game ended is when reports emerged, and so it obviously happened right after that. I think it happened probably about 4:45, and the game was over at 4 o'clock. So they didn't even make it to Black Monday with Gerard Mayo. It was off with his head as soon as the game ended. And they had the statement, a lengthy statement, ready to go. So this was not something that happened spur of the moment. And I'm a little surprised because it was a move that the Crafts made that firing Gerard Mayo frankly, it makes them look bad. They put so much talk into, how he was their handpicked guy and he was the one they viewed as Bill Belichick's successor. And to fire him after 1 year is, an embarrassing move for an owner. So in a way, I give them credit for, doing it, even though it made him look bad, firing Gerard Mayo. The fact that they didn't wait, nothing about what the Patriots have done since then is about waiting. They're in rush right now. They fired Mayo as soon as the game was over. Today's Tuesday. They've already interviewed 2 candidates that probably satisfy the Rooney Rule, so they can move forward now with a hire. The Patriots are on top of this and getting moving, which, again, points to what everyone believes is that this whole process is engineered for Mike Vrabel to end up in New England. We'll see if that's the case, but the speed with which everything is progressing certainly suggests that they're trying to move quickly to snag Mike Vrabel before another team does.
And to that end, Ben, and Wade is a huge Jets fan, so I'm probably stealing a question from him, but how much do you feel like Vrabel's connection to the Jets, I think he interviewed with the Jets Friday, maybe, how much did that accelerate this situation, do you feel like, or did it?
Wade and I are on the same wavelength on this one. There was a whole Mike Vrabel media tour on Friday where that huge article from The Athletic came out, and then he was also interviewing for the Jets that day, and I think all of that was pointed squarely at Robert Kraft. The crux of the article was, hey, I can be collaborative, and I'm not so hard to work with, and look at all these Browns guys saying how easy I am to work with. That was aimed right at Robert Kraft, whose number one word has been collaboration since firing Bill Belichick. And then the fact that it was the Friday before the final game. Hey, it's the Jets. If you want me, don't let me go to the Jets now. So I think absolutely this is all connected. And I think the speed with which the Patriots are processing now, I think is a sign that they want to move quickly and make sure they get a guy like Vrabel, because they can't hire someone now. They can't hire Ben Johnson. The NFL wants you to slow down the process. And if they wanted to hire Ben Johnson or Brian Flores, they have to wait until at least after the divisional round to even interview them. And then, as long as those teams are alive in the playoffs, they have to wait. Whereas if you're not employed right now, like Mike Vrabel or the 2 guys the Patriots interviewed today, Byron Leftwich or Pep Hamilton, you can hire those guys immediately. So I think the Patriots, not to be cynical, but I think they will have gone through the Rooney Rule. They've satisfied that. And now if they want to, they can hire Vrabel right this second if they want to.
Yeah,
it's tough not to be. It's tough not to be cynical about the Rooney Rule at this point, but yeah, go ahead, Wade.
No doubt. And I wanted to ask you a couple real quick here, Ben. It's interesting we're bringing you on today. We're talking about our own general manager situation. What's the latest with the Patriots and their GM? Is Elliott Wolf kind of going to remain in that role after it seems like he was the de facto GM for the franchise this year?
Well, I think he's going to be sticking around probably at least through the draft. Robert Kraft was a little cagey about the whole thing. He said Elliott Wolf and his number 2 guy, Alonzo Highsmith, will be involved in the interview process. But his answers were very brief, and it did not create the most It didn't show the strongest faith in Elliott Wolf. I think he's going to be sticking around. I wouldn't be surprised if he even stays through the season. It'd be weird if you let the guy handle your draft and then fire him right away. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they brought someone else in that quietly became the shadow general manager, or if this ended up 2025 just ended up being the phrase is escaping me right now, but like a dummy year, and they just get through the year and then they bring in the guy. I've been hearing Mike Vrabel rumors for 2 years with the Patriots, and the other rumors I'm hearing are that the Crafts love Nick Caserio, the GM of the Texans. So like maybe that takes another year to unwind everything, and the Patriots don't get their dream scenario in place until maybe 2026. But Elliott Wolf, I don't think, is on the most solid ground, but I don't think the Patriots are going to blow him out because there's just so much work done with the draft and the offseason and everything. But I don't think he's on the firmest ground. I will say, too, with your guys, with Rand Carthon, I don't know how much this really adds, but I can say this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment type thing of firing Rand Carthon. I've actually been hearing for like over a month now that he was in real trouble. And that, someone's like, yeah, the analytics guy is the one who's got the owner's voice now. And I believe that's Chad Breaker, who became in charge today. So this was not something that, was decided. I don't know if it's the right decision to move on from Rand Carthon, but this is not something that happened overnight. This is something that had been heading this way now for at least a month, if not more.
That sounds about right, given the state of Nashville these days. And being the other part I was going to ask you too, with kind of Wolf in the mix, what is the Patriots' plan should things disintegrate with Vrabel? Do they just immediately pause and wait for some of those guys in playoffs to kind of become available? Or what's their pivot in your mind?
I mean, it does seem like there is only one logical conclusion right now, but it does seem like maybe they are going to do a full search. Maybe they are, because there was a report yesterday that they have put in a request for Ben Johnson. I mean, I think if they're interviewing Mike Vrabel, I think they've got to interview Brian Flores, another guy who's a former longtime Patriot. And I think actually did pretty well, especially his last 2 years as the Dolphins head coach. And then now has been doing fantastic as the Vikings defensive coordinator. So I would think Brian Flores would be on their list. And then who knows? I mean, if they're really willing to open it up, they should be looking at Cliff Kingsbury. They should be looking at Liam Cohen. Some of these offensive coordinators who can maybe get the most out of Drake May. But man, it really does seem like Vrabel's the target. And then, offensive coordinator, maybe Josh McDaniels comes back, another guy who's currently unemployed. I think still has a great relationship with the Patriots. So I don't know. It does seem like the wheels are in motion to put kind of Vrabel back, and then we'll see if the other pieces fall in place too with Josh McDaniels and Nick Caserio eventually.
It really doesn't sound like there's much of a plan B, though, does it, Ben? It really kind of feels like Vrabel or bust in this situation.
Well, we'll see. Maybe that's just all of us on the outside just kind of making some logical assumptions, I guess. I mean, the speed with which they're conducting everything this week, to me, only further adds, to the signs that they're going all in on Vrabel. Because there's no need to do this quickly if they're really going to do a thorough, drawn-out search. And the Crafts have never, I don't think since Pete Carroll in 1996 or 1997, have they hired a guy from the outside. They knew they targeted Belichick. They had a previous relationship with him, and they targeted him. They targeted, they totally skipped the process last year and elevated Gerard Mayo without interviewing anyone. When they've needed offensive coordinators the last couple of years, they've reverse engineered it where they knew who they wanted, and then they filled in the pieces backwards in the interview process. So they've always been a relationship team, which again, it would be very out of the ordinary, out of their DNA for them to hire a head coach who they just had no relationship with.
Ben Volen of the Boston Globe joining us here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. You can follow him on Twitter at Ben Volen, Volin. Am I pronouncing that correct? It's not Volin or anything like that. Okay, great.
No, I say it rhymes with stolen, so you got it right.
Other than be in the wrong place at the wrong time, did Gerard Mayo do anything to warrant his dismissal after one season?
Well, I do feel a lot worse for Mayo now that he has been dumped and he is one and done. I look at it as he shouldn't have had the job to begin with. He was not ready for the job. They didn't he was taking over a roster that was the worst in the NFL. He didn't have one of the biggest drawbacks to Mayo is he'd never been outside Foxborough before. He's only been a coach for a few years, so he didn't have the network of people. They really relied on Elliot Wolf to fill out the staff. So, you know, he was elevated to a job that he just wasn't prepared for. It was a bad situation, and they didn't give him any assistance on the coaching staff. There was very little experience. First-time coordinators on both sides of the ball, a first-time GM, new coaches, you know, everyone in new jobs all at once. It was a very difficult ask. You know, that said, Mayo didn't do a whole lot, I don't think, to warrant a second year. And I fall on the side of, I think the Crafts just had to rip off the Band-Aid and make the move. His decision-making on fourth down was just maddening, you know, so conservative. No one loved to punt on 4th and 1 from opponent's territory more than Gerard Mayo, or against you guys, against the Titans, you know, go for 2 at the end, go for the win. Instead, he kicks the extra point. They lose in overtime. Just weird decisions all year. Poor messaging from the podium. It became a running joke. Every Monday he was walking back something that he said or had to apologize for something that he said. So it's just, it was a bad fit from the start. And I feel for him now. You know, it's going to take him a little while. This move, it kind of sped up his trajectory, and now he kind of crashes. And he doesn't, like I said, he doesn't have that network around the league. So he's going to have to find someone to catch on with. And, you know, if he had just taken a more normal route, like go defensive coordinator, wait a few more years, perhaps this would have worked out better for him, this opportunity. So I feel for him in that sense, but I just kind of feel like he got a job that he wasn't ready for. And I think the Crafts, they were willing to give it a shot for 1 year, but you know, I think they're probably right to move on, and now that they've got a golden asset in Drake May, I think they need to get him better, more established coaching.
That said, how did he get the job?
I mean, the Crafts did promise him, you know, in contract to be the coach in waiting for Bill Belichick. They added that.
Why? Knowing all of that.
It's a great question. And, you know, I think the Crafts, I think the crux of it is I don't think they expected it to happen so soon. I think they expected Belichick to maybe have 2 more years, and then they didn't expect to go 4-13 last year and having to fire Belichick. And I think they were maybe caught without a real succession plan there, and they were too scared to go through a full interview process. But yeah, it is kind of interesting why they made Mayo, you know, the coach in waiting. It allowed them to, you know, skip all the rules and skip all the processes that the NFL wants them to go through as far as hiring a coach. They didn't have to interview anyone. They were just able to elevate Gerard Mayo last year. I mean, it is crazy that they would put an inexperienced coach in that position, and then, you know, not let him see it through. Like, it's the Crafts' fault that Gerard Mayo, you know, was in his. It all goes to the Crafts. Like, it's not Gerard Mayo's fault that he was inexperienced. So, you know, it is crazy that they didn't let him see it through longer, give him a little more, a little more leash in that sense. But, you know, at the same time, I do think for the best move for the organization, it was going to be a tough sell to bring Gerard Mayo back. The fans are ticked off. They were booing the team for winning the game the other day. I think fans were canceling season tickets left and right. And if, you know, you brought Gerard Mayo back, that was going to be a tough sell. So I think the Crafts, they pretty much had to make the move.
Yeah, Ben, what does that say about ownership? We see this so many times. The ego kind of gets in the way. And I found it kind of interesting for as prideful of an ownership group with the Kraft family and the organization. They did pull the plug on a guy that they hand selected. I thought that was an interesting dynamic in this whole situation. They were willing to have some egg on their face today to maybe ensure some success down the road. It seems like.
I agree. I give them credit for making
in a weird way. I give them credit for it.
Right. Yeah, because it does make them it does get egg on their face a little bit. On the other hand, though, as I said, it would have been worse for the business, I think, if they kept Gerard Mayo. I think the fans were done with him. They wanted they need to, you know, keeping Mayo would not have been an exciting thing for the franchise, and it would have, I think, really hurt. You know, this team has not had to worry about season ticket sales, but with the direction of the franchise, I think, you know, I heard from several who were like, I'm done with this. And I heard stories about the full court press the Patriots were putting on fans the other day for season tickets, bringing them down to the field pregame and allowing them to sign up for tickets without deposits and things like that. So yes, it made them look embarrassing, but I still think it was the least, it was the best move for their business. And it was the move, like, the Krafts are businessmen first, and they're going to do what's best for the Patriots in that sense. So if keeping Mayo would have done that, then they would have done that. But, not only did they put him in a bad spot, but the firing too is they did not show him a lot of respect. They blew him out Sunday immediately after the game. They didn't let him address the team on Monday morning. Doug Peterson of the Jaguars addressed the team after he got fired on Monday morning. They didn't let Gerard Mayo say goodbye to his players. They didn't let him, give one last press conference or anything like that. Just very quickly kind of brushing him aside.
And when Jacksonville makes you look worse, that's probably not a good sign either.
No, it's not. So, and if this thing, once again, if this is all just reverse engineered to put Mike Vrabel as head coach, I think fans will be happy with Vrabel. But again, it'll be a sign that the Krafts really haven't learned anything, and that they're still just kind of stuck in their own ways and treating the Patriots like a family business.
And whatever happened to the Patriot way?
I think it was really the Brady way, and it was the Brady and Belichick way. And it worked when, you had a coach who was really on point and on top of his stuff, and he had a quarterback who was willing to be chewed out. And I think that's always been such an underrated quality of Brady. And one reason why the Patriots stayed together for so long was he was willing to get chewed out in front of the team and to just be one of the 53 guys. And it really helped everyone else fall in line when they see Tom Brady getting chewed out or Tom Brady running a lap or whatever. And Brady put up with it for a while. In the end, he got sick of Belichick always chewing him out, and that's what led to the divorce. But for 18 years, he took it. And I think that's why there was a Patriot way. Now there's no Patriot way, and they're looking to, reestablish any sort of culture within the building. But, now it's going to be 3 head coaches in 3 years, 5 offensive coordinators in 5 years. They're now the Jets. They're now one of these franchises that's just cycling through coaches all the time. And at least they look like they found one, if not maybe 2 quarterbacks with Drake May and Joe Milton. So at least they're on decent footing moving forward, because looks like they do have a quarterback.
With all of that said, with regards to Bill Belichick, Ben, we'd be remiss if we didn't ask you what your reaction was to him getting the North Carolina job, and now maybe a month or so removed from that actual announcement. What are your expectations for that situation? Yeah,
I mean, I was not surprised that he didn't get an NFL job because, just his age and his kind of grumpy persona. It's a tough sell in today's NFL. Coaching is a young man's game. Coaches are 38 years old now. So when he didn't get interest last year in the NFL, I wasn't shocked to not see him get interest. I was a little surprised to see him, take a job like UNC. Like, that's not exactly a blue blood college football program, but I think that's the caliber of program that, is willing to hand over, authority to a guy like Bill Belichick. But then once we saw the contract, like, he clearly has, one eye on the NFL still. And if an NFL opportunity came up, the buyout, even this year, if an owner right now wanted Bill Belichick, his buyout to UNC is $10 million. An owner would pay that, and then next year, starting in next year, it drops to $1 million. That's chump change. I mean, they can find that in their couch cushion. So Belichick is not wedded to the UNC job. If an NFL team came calling, I think he would drop UNC at a moment's notice and go back to the NFL. But I just think at his age, teams aren't looking for a guy who's as accomplished as Belichick is. And I think he's probably the greatest, if not one of the top 2 or 3 in NFL history. He's always been a little difficult to work with. He needs full control. It's a tough sell in today's NFL.
Absolutely. Ben, I wanted to ask before we get you out of here, you mentioned UNC and quarterbacks. You seem like you have a good one there in Drake May. Milton obviously looked fantastic versus the Bills' second string, but still looked pretty good. Biggest need, or what do you maybe see the Patriots doing with their draft selection in the first round this year?
Biggest need is everything else.
Makes sense.
Roster is brutal. They have holes everywhere. I think the offense, especially, they've got to fix it. Since Brady left, I think they're 28th in scoring and 30th in touchdown passes. Now I think Drake's a good one. I was really impressed with how Drake May played this year, especially with, the worst offensive line in the league, worst receiving core in the league. Really made some plays and did a nice job. Now they've got the number 4 pick, which, fans are upset that they lost number 1, and I get it because they badly need to trade down. They need to trade down and accumulate picks, and they need bodies much more than they need a top 5 pick. That said, it's, I don't know if number 4 is too terrible because the 3 teams ahead of them, Titans, Browns, and Giants, are all probably going to go. It seems like they're going to go quarterback, quarterback, quarterback. So if a 4th quarterback emerges, maybe they can get a team to trade up, or maybe the Patriots can get the best position player in the entire draft, whether it's Travis Hunter, whether it's a left tackle. Those are their 2 biggest needs. They need a number 1 receiver. They haven't had a 700-yard receiver the last 2 years, and not just wide receivers, but anyone on the team. No one's gone over even 700 yards the last 2 years. So they got to get Drake May, a playmaker on the outside, and they need a left tackle. Their tackle situation is a disaster, so they've got to shore up the offensive line. So many draft picks, so many resources need to be spent this offseason on the offensive line. So the offense is clearly what they need to fix, but so is the defense. The Patriots thought they'd had a pretty good defense this year, and that fell apart too. So this team is still, 2 drafts away from being a really good competitive team. So they just need bodies, and they really need to hit on draft picks and to find coaches who can develop players, because this past year the coaching staff did not do a good job with really any of the draft picks outside of Drake May and Joe Milton.
You saying Hunter Henry not a number 1 receiving option going forward for the Patriots?
A nice safety valve. Actually did develop a good rapport with Drake May and had a good season, but he can't be your number 1. He's got to be your number 3. He's not a guy who's going to run away from a defense. He's a possession tight end. Most of the Patriots' success this year was throwing to the tight ends and the running backs. They had a little bit of success on the outside, but they haven't had a game changer at receiver, since Gronk and Edelman. So they need to get Drake May a playmaker. I would love to see Travis Hunter, but I do have a feeling that left tackle is probably where they're going to go in the first round. Because if you look at all the analytics, all the computer cowboy on Twitter and all these guys, the Patriots offensive line was just brutal this year, just really, really bad.
People in Nashville can relate to that sentiment. Ben Volan of the Boston Globe joining us here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Ben, we really appreciate you taking some time with us, man, and good luck.
All right. And good luck, and thank you for having me as well.
All right. Whether you're an athlete or a weekend warrior, when it comes to your performance, don't settle for anything less than excellence. We're proud to announce that Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint Clinic is now Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, where we are redefining sports medicine and orthopedics. Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance's team of expert sports medicine physicians understands the unique demands of your body. TOA Columbia specializes in personalized orthopedic care, offering state-of-the-art treatments for everything from sports injuries to joint replacements. Learn more at toacolumbia.com.
Step into the Lionel retail store at Opry Mills, Nashville, and you'll be captivated by all the magic of the 123-year history of Lionel trains. Whether you're already a train enthusiast or just getting started, Lionel will energize your love for trains. NASCAR fan? Come check out your local Lionel station to learn all there is to know about model trains and die-cast NASCAR collectibles. Visit nashville.lionel.com or call 615-455-9399.
Custom Stone Handler supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with River Stone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe that the measure of any person or company is how they treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStonehandlers.com.
You're seeing the signs too, right?
What signs? So Busy Bee is a very close-knit family. We fight just like every family does. We have arguments, but we always come out with a solution to the problems. We don't just fight about what we want, we fight about what customers need. We want to make sure that every customer we go to is more than satisfied. And that doesn't just start whenever we show up at their door, that starts when we show up every day at work. We want to make sure that we are serving our customers to the best of our ability.
We continue the Monday Mirror edition of Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. That's Wade Neely. I'm Maurice Patton. Joining us now from the Nashville Banner, the Nashville Post, the First and 10 podcast, Philadelphia native David Beauclair joining us. David, I know you are a professional journalist and you probably declare no fandom at this point, but at some point, how big of a Philadelphia Eagles fan were you?
You know, I've been in this business long enough, Mo. I tell people all the time, I've basically lost touch with what it is to be a fan. Certainly I watch my teams that I grew up watching much more so than any others, and I pay attention to them. But I don't feel the emotional investment watching games, even a Super Bowl game like like a typical fan does. But yesterday was a really special day, and as was a few years ago when the Eagles won before, but it was a little better this time. Me and my four best friends from back home, had a group text going. We actually had one the first Friday night of the season when the Eagles played the Packers in Brazil too. We had a lot of chatter that night, and by the end of the night, we're all saying how much we love each other and whatnot. And it was that kind of thing that it puts you in that. It puts you in that mood that, like, this is where I'm from. These are my people. We're all just so happy about everything in life right now. So that was what was really most enjoyable to me about that, and the fact that I'm glad that it was. If the Chiefs were not going to three-peat, I'm glad for the sake of the sport and the sake of everybody's sanity that it was. It was a knockout, right? This was not a split decision in any way, shape, or form. There's nothing the Chiefs can say. There's nothing anyone can say about, officiating did that. The first huge call of the game, right? Automatically, first drive of the game goes in favor of the Chiefs, and you're just like, oh, here we go. As a sports fan, I hate when officials become the story, but they couldn't help but be the story coming into this. It just felt a little too obvious over most of this season and through the playoffs, and then that first call happens, and you're just thinking, oh, here we go. It's gonna be this thing. But then the Eagles did kind of what they've been doing through the postseason. It's one of the more impressive postseason runs we've seen in the NFL here in recent memory, I think.
40-22, the Eagles over Kansas City last night in a game that wasn't that close, David.
No, it really wasn't. There was a sense among my boys they were disappointed when the Eagles finally gave up a point. There was a bit there where you thought, wow, they might just shut out Mahomes and the Chiefs, which that would be really something. But it's interesting, like you guys were talking about Devontae Smith and that group. It was one of those performances too. Yeah, Jalen Hurts probably was the MVP, but it wasn't one of those clear-cut things either, right? Like, it could have been Devontae Smith. It could have been Josh Sweat. You could have just said the Eagles' offensive line, give it to all five of those guys. It was a really good performance, and it showed a familiar sort of. I guess we've seen this before. We just forget it all the time. That line play means everything, and particularly a defensive line. I'm sure you guys have talked about it. You've seen the stats that Mahomes dropped back 42 times yesterday, and the Eagles didn't blitz him once, and they still sacked him 6 times. They had 6 tackles for loss. They had 11 quarterback hits. I mean, it's the same thing as go back to 2007 with the undefeated Patriots against the Giants, right? Who had Michael Strahan and Justin Tuck and Osi Umenyiora, that bunch of those guys, and they sacked Brady 6 times in that game and hit him 9 times, and it wasn't nearly as lopsided. But the narrative coming out of that game was exactly the same coming out of this one. Is if you can get pressure with your front four and drop everybody else into coverage, even the best quarterbacks on the planet are going to have a hard time beating you. I mean, the pressure is the key thing. Anybody can drop 7 into coverage, right, and make a quarterback sort of work to read the coverage and find somebody open. But if you don't give them the time to stand back there and just analyze everything, it's going to be a problem. And that was as ordinary as we've seen Patrick Mahomes look in a long time.
David, the question that I had coming out of last night was, as good as Philadelphia's defensive line is, as good as their defense is, the fact that they were able to get home with just their front four with the effectiveness that they were, was that them, or does Kansas City have some real questions to answer with their offensive front?
I think it's a little bit of both. The Eagles' defensive line has been good all year. It got better as they went, and people knew that all season long that the Chiefs' offensive line wasn't as good as it's been. They had, they lost a couple people. They had guys playing out of position after injuries and whatnot, and Mahomes and Kelsey and those guys, they can cover up a lot for a long period of time. And, we saw the same thing with the Bengals a couple of years ago when, they starting with that playoff game here in Nashville, that when Joe Burrow got sacked, what was it, 9 times, but they still, they still won the game and got themselves, to the Super Bowl and ultimately couldn't finish it off there. I mean, eventually, again, this is what I say, we nobody wants to talk about it until these moments happen, but we all know it in our very core that line play means everything. Like just think about the fact too. You guys were talking late in the last bit there about the guys who have won the Heisman, the national championship, and a Super Bowl, right? And there's now 5 of those guys. Not one of those guys is a quarterback. Right? I mean, not one of those guys is a quarterback. Like, think about how many quarterbacks have won Heisman trophies and none of them have put that trifecta together. Like, what does that tell you?
It's a heck of a point. David Beauclair of the Nashville Banner joining us here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. DB, how excited is Jim Washburn about the way things played out? As we sit here talking about defensive line play and his son Jeremiah being on that Eagle staff, and they just really showed up and showed out last night.
Tammy Beauclair and I were talking about that at one point during the game, that I wish I could have seen Jim Washburn, because I loved my time working with Jim Washburn, and one thing about Jim is he is authentic and in his emotions at the moment, and he has a lot of emotions, and I guarantee you he watched a good portion of that game through tear-filled eyes. I mean, he just A, because it was his son's unit. B, the way that defensive line played. I think he would have been moved by any defensive line playing that well. The fact that it was his son's unit, I just can't imagine the joy and the pride and everything he felt. But I guarantee you, whoever was with him had 100% certainty exactly how he was feeling, because he was wearing his heart on his sleeve, his emotions on his face, tears running down his cheeks. I have no doubt that all of that was going on at some point. And while we're hearkening back to 1999, if you will, and the Titans' appearance in the Super Bowl, this was fascinating to me too. When you talk about Jalen Hurts and I don't think Hurts is ever going to end up, no matter how many Super Bowls he wins, in the conversation with Brady and with Mahomes and with Manning and with Terry Bradshaw and some of these guys, because he plays the game a different way, right? But just think about what he's done in his two Super Bowl appearances. Steve McNair in 2000, the 99 season, set the Super Bowl record for rushing yards by a quarterback when he carried 8 times for 64 yards. That record stood until 2 years ago when Jalen Hurts broke it with 70 rushing yards. And then last year, Mahomes topped it with 66. And now Hurts topped himself and everybody else again with 72. So, it wasn't like it was a bunch of designed runs and some of the stuff that you see like the Ravens do with Lamar Jackson necessarily either. I mean, it was this guy doing what he needs to do to win the way McNair did. But you're starting to see a little bit more of kind of Steve McNair's impact, I think, on the NFL. You can draw a pretty straight line, I think, between Hurts and McNair a lot of ways. And I think Steve would be tickled that it's a guy like Hurts who has that record now instead of him.
Yeah, David, the one thing that I found just absolutely mind-blowing is Saquon Barkley. Yeah, he carries 25 times. He only has 57 rushing yards. I think, number one, if you came into the game and you said that was his stat line, you would not like the Eagles' chances necessarily. But more mind-blowing than that, he didn't lead the Eagles in rushing, but Hurts and Barkley both outrushed the Chiefs as a whole. And I know they got behind the 8 ball early, but man, what can we make, if anything, of the pure and utter lack of a ground game from Kansas City? 6 combined carries between Pacheco and Hunt last night.
Yeah, well, I mean, the score obviously had something to do with that. The Eagles eventually turned them one-dimensional, but it felt like the Chiefs that was their plan from the start. It seemed like they wanted to maybe throw to set up the run and just never got to it. And Saquon Barkley, say this too, he was the Eagles' leading receiver in terms of catches. He had 6 of them too. So, he found ways to contribute even though he wasn't the dominating runner that we've seen the last couple of weeks. How Nick Sirianni said it after the game though too, right? They asked him, how do you become a good coach? And he said, you get good players. And I think that's what, Mike Vrabel kind of said the same things a lot of times during his time as Titans coach. And there's a lot of truth to that. And, this Eagles team had a lot of good players and they were healthy at the right time. It's funny to think that this time a year ago, there was speculation about whether Nick Sirianni would keep his job after the Eagles had started 10-1 and then fell apart down the stretch. But it was, injuries got to them. Hurts in particular wasn't healthy, played through some stuff, and they didn't have the kind of ground game that they do this year. It just, you put enough good players on your team, and it's probably pretty easy to coach those guys.
Well, David, to your point, they were saying that after week 6, after barely beating the Browns. And I find it fascinating. It seems like we might have unlocked something, whether it's Ohio State or the Eagles. You just got to simply leak out that you want your coach fired in the middle of the season. And all of a sudden, your team runs off and wins the whole thing, it feels like. What a turnaround for him and that coaching staff. Yeah,
and you have to feel like, I mean, obviously – nothing certain, but you have to feel like he's not going to be hearing those rumors, or he's not going to be on anybody's hot seat list for a while now. I mean, you win a Super Bowl, you go to 2 in 3 years, you have 54 wins including the playoffs in your first 4 years as an NFL head coach. It's going to be pretty tough for anybody to run him out of there unless he says or does something really, really stupid that leaves the Eagles no choice. And he, you said it, Mo, I grew up there, right? I mean, he sort of fits what people in that town like too. There is, the teams for the most part that have done well in my lifetime, the Philadelphia teams, they they sort of gravitate to the city's mindset, and they almost, they're a product of what those folks there want to see, and then they kind of feed on that and go, which is, they don't want to be the New York Yankees, or with this massive payroll, and they don't want to be the Dallas Cowboys with this super slick, well packaged image. They want to be a little bit ugly, a little bit rough around the edges, and I think Sirianni certainly fits the collective mind's eye of the Philadelphia sports fan, if you will.
To steal a phrase from one of Wade's favorite teams, they want to be a little grit and grindy.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, just think of the like the '93 Phillies, right, with John Kruk and Darren Dalton and Lenny Dykstra, and what kind of a Mitch Williams, the high wire act every time you got into a closer situation. Just what that, but people ate those guys up, and you back in the mid '70s, the Philadelphia Flyers and the Broad Street Bullies. I mean, there was nothing poetic or beautiful about the hockey they played, but I guarantee you, I could get off the plane in Philadelphia right now, probably within 2 minutes, find somebody who could name 12 guys off that team. I mean, people still love that bunch.
David, as we kind of spin it forward, and again, so much talk about this being 25 years now since the Titans were in the Super Bowl, and obviously that famous or infamous matchup with the Rams there down in Atlanta. Where is this team in terms of that?
Yeah, it's a long way off. I have never, in all the years, and I have covered this team in some way, shape, or form since they showed up as the Tennessee Oilers in 1997, and I have never seen a version of the Titans or Tennessee Oilers that had so little sense of self and had so little idea how it was going to find a way to win a game. And I think that lack of identity was recognized widely by the fan base. The apathy in the stands was the worst I've ever seen it. There were some of the smaller crowds I've ever seen down there at Nissan Stadium. So Brian Callahan and the new front office staff, they have a long way to go. It's not just a couple of holes that they have to plug here. They've got to figure out who they are right now. They have to figure out who they want to be and how they're going to get there. And I don't think they have answers to any of those three questions right now, which makes it a long slog. Now, they do have some money to spend. They obviously have the potential to make a big splash in the draft. And I thought it was really interesting after Mike Borgonzi was hired, and Chad Brinker and he were both talking about what they, kind of how they want to go about building this. And they talked about having at least 10 draft picks a year for the next, and like 30 picks. So an average of 10 picks a year over the next 3 years, with 12 of those picks somewhere along the line being among the top 100 overall picks. And as I thought about that, we talk all the time about analytics in sports right now, and in football, it's, we all have kind of become accustomed to the fact, well, if it's 4th and 1 inside the opponent's 30, that's a go for it situation rather than kick a field goal. I mean, this is front office analytics right here. This is basically Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi saying, look, as much as we want to do it, we're not going to hit on all our draft picks. We're not going to hit on all our high draft picks, but the numbers tell us if we're going to string together good draft classes, this is the massive sort of number of picks that we have to throw at this problem. And so I'll be really interested. They don't have 10 picks right now in this coming draft. They don't have 10 picks lined up for either of the next 2 drafts. So I'm really interested to see how they go about amassing these picks they want to get, if they can get the numbers they want, and then see what they can do about it. But it sounds to me like even those guys are basically saying this is not going to be a 1-year quick fix. Best case scenario, in 3 years we're going to be good.
when you talk about that number of draft picks that they want to try to get, are they telling us without telling us that they are not going to be exercising the number 1 pick?
I think that, yes, I think that's exactly what they're saying. The game. I guess the thing is, like, do you really want Travis Hunter? Like, Travis Hunter seems to me like a guy a piece you could build around, right? And if he's the guy you want, how far back can you go and still get him? I think the answer is probably not very far. So can you get, like, you think back to 2016, for example, when John Robinson traded from number 1 back to number 15 and amassed a lot of picks, then got his way back up to number 7 or 8 to get 7, I think it was, or no, number 8 to get Jack Conklin. That was, I thought he did a good job with sort of making that happen. And, can this bunch pull off a similar move like that? Or if you're okay with not drafting one of the quarterbacks and not drafting Travis Hunter, for example, then what is it exactly you're looking for, and how do you go about getting it? I think free agency obviously is going to play a factor into that. If I was a betting man, I would put money down right now that says the Titans ultimately are not picking at number 1 when that clock starts in late April.
Wade?
I was just going to point out one other quick thing, somewhat dubious for the Titans, but it was cool to see. We talked about, obviously, the matchup versus the Rams. They had the pregame Super Bowl coverage, the sit-down interview with Kevin Dyson. And, Mo, you'll love this. He was rocking the Centennial swag on set there. So it was cool to see. And we got Samuel Jackson shouting out, "Tighten up," although I don't think he was necessarily referring to the NFL franchise.
That's right.
The clip will beg to differ otherwise, but there were a few little Titans overtones throughout the course of the weekend.
Yeah, it's funny. I need to go back and find that Kevin Dyson thing. I went out to brunch yesterday morning, and I was in a restaurant, and I could see off in the TV that they were doing something. I thought, I got to remember to watch that when I get home, and I didn't do it, so I'll have to go check. But of course, the other side of it was, and you mentioned this last segment too, Wade. AJ Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, both scoring touchdowns. Like one you were okay with the Titans trading away. It's like, okay, DeAndre Hopkins, I get it. You don't need to be here. Go try and get yourself a championship. That was good. But the AJ Brown thing still just I think it hangs over this franchise like a cloud. And it's not like AJ was dominant in that game, but you saw the one catch down the sideline, just the ease with which he just sort of puts his hands out and catches the ball. And there's nobody like that on this roster. And there was nobody really like that before. I mean, if you were to write a book right now on the 25-year history of the Tennessee Titans to this point, there would absolutely be a chapter on the quest for wide receivers, right? Like, starting with drafting Kevin Dyson in 98 instead of Randy Moss. And, Dyson was a good player, but he was no Randy Moss, signing Carl Pickens, and that turned into a disaster in 2000. Bringing Andre Johnson in, and 5-6 weeks into the season, he decides he wants to retire. Eric Moulds at the end of his career. There's been this constant quest for, even Randy Moss coming here eventually. What was, whatever year that was, and then Vince Young wouldn't throw the ball to him. It was the darndest thing. This has been a place where wide receivers go to die. And AJ Brown and DeAndre Hopkins are the two guys who, in a lot of ways, broke that mold. Brown was the draft pick that this team had always wanted, and he was as good as anybody could have hoped. And after 3 years, they just trade him away in what looks like a disastrous trade right now. And Hopkins was the veteran who comes in here, was as good as you almost as good as you remember, as good as you would expect at this point in his career, was the big brother to Will Levis, and was going to help bring him along. And then ultimately things are so bad, you figure, the best thing is to trade him away. So it's the wide receiver riddle for this team. It's been so many head coaches, so many general managers right now, and how nobody can seem to solve it in a day and age when football is all about throwing the ball, and there are wide receivers by the dozens coming out of college and making plays. I mean, it's just remarkable to me that this team can't figure that out.
It could have been worse. Could have faced the Ravens. It could have been Ravens Eagles, and we could have saw Derrick Henry and AJ Brown squaring off.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I guess that's the bright side to looking at. But there again, like when you talk about this franchise's identity, right? You go from Eddie George to Travis Henry to Lendale White to Chris Johnson and Derrick Henry, and I mean, there's just 1,000-yard rushers all over the place, and I think there even as much as people were sad to see Derrick Henry go, there's sort of this sense, well, they'll get another because they always get another one of those. But who's going to be the next AJ Brown, and where are they going to find him? There's no reason. And again, Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker shouldn't be saddled with this. They're not the ones who picked all these other guys in the draft who turned out to be ordinary or less. But that's kind of what they're dealing with. The feeling is there's never going to be another guy like AJ Brown here. In the meantime, he's going to go win more Super Bowls in Philadelphia.
There it is. David Beauclair of the Nashville Banner and co-host of the First and 10 podcast with fellow friend of the show, John Glennon, joining us here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. David, we appreciate you taking some time with us. Be sure and tell Tammy Beauclair we said hello, and we'll catch up with you soon.
I will do. It's always fun to visit with you boys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Let's take a quick break. We will come back for the final segment of the Monday Mirror here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by TOA of
At Delta Dental of Tennessee, we know our success begins and ends with providing superior quality service, and that includes serving those who need it most. This year, we're celebrating 25 years of giving back to the community we call home. Delta Dental, along with our Smile 180 Foundation, supports Tennessee's dental colleges and oral health education, children's hospitals, free and reduced cost dental clinics, and other like-minded charities. Here's to the next 25 plus years of ensuring healthy smiles.
Whether you're an athlete or a weekend warrior, when it comes to your performance, don't settle for anything less than excellence. We're proud to announce that Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint Clinic is now Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, where we are redefining sports medicine and orthopedics. Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance's team of expert sports medicine physicians understands the unique demands of your body. TOA Columbia specializes in personalized orthopedic care, offering state-of-the-art treatments for everything from sports injuries to joint replacements. Learn more at toacolumbia.com. And we are pleased to now have with us from the Professional Golfers Association Tour, Blades Brown, joining us here on Main Street Sports Today. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. How about you guys?
We're good,
Doing
brother.
well, thanks. Appreciate you taking some time with us. I guess this weather kind of kept you from getting out and swinging them today, huh?
I know. I was devastated. I had a tea time lined up and everything. And then I step outside and I was like, oh, never mind. But my mom looked at me and she goes, oh, you know what you can do today instead? Homework. So I've been doing homework for pretty much all day today. Yeah.
Mom's gonna mom, right?
I know my mom is going to mom, but it's all right.
Yeah. Now, take us through this. So you withdrew from physical school at Brentwood Academy after winning state golfing championships as an 8th grader, a freshman, and a sophomore. So you're kind of doing the homeschool thing now, I guess?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm enrolled at Laurel Springs, and it was just so much easier for my schedule. So when I was a sophomore in high school at Brentwood Academy, I missed 45 days of school in one school year. Now, I had an awesome mom, and she kept me accountable for my grades, and I still kept all A's. But it was super hard because my teachers they wanted me to get a lot of stuff done, and I was basically nocturnal for just a little bit, especially during exam time. But I enrolled at Laurel Springs, and it's been so much more flexible with my schedule. I'm able to do school and go to the golf course, and yeah, it's been awesome.
45 days out of school. You're living most high school kids' dream in that regard, Blades. I hope you know that, right?
I know. It's unfortunate though, because usually you miss school and you're like, oh yeah, let's go. Whenever I miss school, I'm like, oh, now I got to make up 3 tests, 2 quizzes, and all that. But no, it's been a lot of fun.
So what's the transition been like for you, Blades, on the course from playing for fun to being a professional?
Well, golf, I love playing golf. It's been a passion of mine ever since I was a little kid. So it still hasn't set in that this is my job now. I still kind of see it as I get to play golf, basketball, pickleball, ping pong all day, every day. And then, so it's been sweet. Yeah.
As you are out at these professional events, who have you been awestruck by? Who have you met that it's like, oh my God, it's X?
Man, that's a great question. I'd say the most significant person that has come up to me was Justin Thomas, just because he's very decorated on the PGA Tour. And I remember I was putting, I was minding my own business, doing my own thing, on the putting green, and all of a sudden this guy comes and taps me on the shoulder, and I'm like, "What's up, JT?" And he was like, "What up, man?" And that to me meant so much, just because a person of his caliber. Me, like I didn't come to him; he came up to me and just offered me words of encouragement. That to him, it takes such little effort, but to me, it's awesome.
And what that says is they know who you are.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the significance of that? That they know who you are, they know what you've done. Your name's been mentioned with Bobby Jones and different things like that, and you're just coming out. That's got to be pretty awe-inspiring for you.
Yeah, it's been so special. I have some awesome people surrounding me, whether it's my mom, my dad, or my family, or my team. They've been such influential people in my life. Then also my sport reps, Callaway. I think their clubs are the best in the world. Like I wouldn't play if they weren't good. So, plus I play blades as well. I think that if I didn't play blades, it'd almost be a sin. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a smart move on your part, recognizing that that would not necessarily be good karma, I think, if you went another direction. Yeah. So props with the blades. Yeah. I do want to ask you, Blades. I watched a video last night of you playing with Grant Horvat, who's a YouTube phenom, and I don't want to toot your own horn. I guess you could do it, but you absolutely smoked this guy. He's got over 1 million followers across all social media, and you absolutely dominated this guy. What was it like playing and kind of being in that space with a fun personality like that?
Well, first of all, Grant's awesome. He made it so easy for me to just go out and play golf with him. Had some great conversations. He's a very authentic guy, which I really appreciate. But he came out, he sent me a DM. He was like, "Hey man, you want to get out after it sometime?" I said, "Heck yeah, I want to get after it sometime." And then Grant came in, and then he didn't give me any strokes, which I think he probably should have. But it was so much fun. We made a lot of birdies, and yeah, we had a day.
Think you went 6 under. Think he went 1 over. So yeah, I'd say you got him pretty good over the course of that. One other thing I noticed in that video, he talked about your swing, and man, he was drooling kind of the fact that you kind of almost have that single plane swing down pat. I'm curious, how do you work on your swing? How much of it is natural, and how much are you kind of constantly tinkering with things?
So I mean, I try to make golf as simple as possible. If you think golf not with simplicity, it can definitely get in your head, right? Like you got to think about, hitting the right amount of club. You got to think about so many external factors. So just simplifying golf has really helped me play and be as successful. And I mean, yeah, so my coach and I, we've been working on, because, golf's a sport, right? So you got to be an athlete in order to play. And so my coach and I were working on the reaction part. So like whenever you play basketball, you're not thinking about your wrist angle. You're not thinking about how hard you're supposed to shoot it. You just react, right? Same thing with golf. So I kind of look at the target, whether I have a pitching wedge from 100 yards or 150 yards. I should be able to react and get the ball there. So that's what my coach and I are working on a lot.
You mentioned during your play at the Amex that you relate a lot of golf to basketball, and it makes sense with your mom having the background that she does and that kind of thing. But take us through your basketball and how that has impacted your golf.
I mean, I think that there are so many opposite parallels with basketball and golf. Whether it's conditioning, like you don't necessarily have to be in awesome shape. Well, I'm not going to say my mom's age, but she still plays basketball and she dominates. So I play with her a lot whenever she plays with these college guys, and it keeps me in shape. Kind of breaks up the monotony of just golf. And yeah, it's awesome.
Walk us through your play at the Amex, Blade, because Blades, your first round, you were even par, and we were talking about it on the show, and Wade's like, he's going to have to go low to get to the weekend. So all you do is run off a 64 in round 2. I mean, what's the mindset coming out of that first round and going into Friday's play?
So yeah, the first day, I mean, I shot even par at probably the easiest golf course of the 3. And so it was a little disappointing, but I was just kind of getting my feet set. I know that I'm going to have a lot of professional golf. So the first one in the books was huge. I just got to get through the day, and for me, that was okay. And then the next day, I was really I was able to let go. And I did have a day. I'd made a lot of putts and hit a lot of great golf shots, but it was so cool to be able to say that I shot 8 under on the PGA Tour at my first event. So it was a lot of fun. Then the last day, started off hot. I was 3 under through 5 on the hardest golf course of the 3. And then, a few mental errors coming down the stretch unfortunately cost me the cut, but you win, you learn. And I definitely learned a lot about that week.
It was certainly fun to keep tabs on you over the course of that weekend, Blades. And obviously it'll be curious to see what your next moves are. I do want to ask you though, jumping right into the professional ranks like that, have you made any adjustments? I'm real curious, the night before a big tournament like that, your first endeavor, walk us through your night's sleep, I guess, and your routine. Do you change anything? Or are you trying to keep things the way they have been thus far?
Well, I think everybody has their own recipe for success. And one of mine is I got to make sure I get enough sleep. If I don't get enough sleep, then, my body's not going to function the way it is or it needs to be. Then I just say it all comes back to my preparation, whether it's because we got out there a week and a half early, just because there was 3 courses. And usually like that's a lot of golf. It's a lot of golf courses you got to memorize. It's a lot of golf shots you got to execute. So just knowing that I'd put in the correct amount of preparation for me to make me feel solid on come tournament day was huge. So I'd say that's kind of my preparation into each event.
Blades Brown, professional golfer, joining us here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Blades, you've got to qualify for most of these tournaments going forward, given your status with the PGA. You missed Monday qualifying for the Farmers Insurance. What's your next Monday grind?
So my next event that I'm in is going to be the Mexico Open, which is coming up in 4 weeks. So I better start channeling my inner sophomore Spanish classes that I took. So it's going to be awesome.
Now, are you in the field for that one, or is that a Monday qualifier as well? You're in the field. Did you get an exemption for that one then?
Yeah, so we're taking it day by day, just kind of strategizing which events that we can use. But yes, I will be playing in the Mexico Open in 4 weeks.
Okay. All right.
Love to hear that. Blades, I do got to ask you too. I loved the banter with you and your caddy Jack. Walk us through the famous quote when you're talking about, a little extra sauce and kind of you throwing a little extra juice out there. I love the way you play the game. So walk us through that exchange.
So yeah, Jack Bethman, he's awesome. He's pretty much like my older brother out there. He's got flow, it's long hair, which I don't have long hair, but he kind of makes up for my short hair. But he just makes it really easy for me to play golf. He calculates the yardages, and then I'm just the one executing the shot. So we work as a team, and everything we do is a team. But then, what was the second part of your question?
Well, I just wanted to know about the famous line. You're about to see some sauce right here when you go out and chip one in.
Yeah, so that's a golf term. So sauce is like backspin, and so I said, "Hey, yo, Jack, I'm gonna put some sauce on this." And he was like, "Do it to him." And so, I think you're referring to the chip in that I had at my first PGA tournament. Yeah, so I looked at Jack and I said, "Hey, man, I'm gonna put some sauce on this," and then I ended up catching it perfect, and it went in. So it was awesome.
I love to hear that. I love the enthusiasm, love the moxie. And also, I read that Jack is pretty tight with Peyton Manning, maybe one of his favorite caddies out Cherry Hills as well. Have you got to meet Peyton, or you got any stories from Jack on Peyton yet?
I have. So at the 2023 U.S. Amateur, where Jack and I were medalists, so he was Peyton Manning's local caddy. So every time Peyton Manning was at Cherry Hills, Jack would caddy for him. And we did really well at Cherry Hills, medalist, lost in the round of 32. But then I was like, "All right, Jack, I'm taking you from Peyton. You're mine now." But no. But Peyton's been awesome. He sent me a couple text messages. I don't know if that was recruiting or anything like that, but yeah, Peyton's awesome.
He wants his caddy back,
baked beans. Go to him. Like he's a guy. Yeah.
What'd you say, Wade? He wants his caddy back?
Yeah, he wants Jack back, man. You're gonna have to fight Peyton Manning for Jack's services going forward, Blades. Hope you know that.
We probably should just play a match and then see what happens from there.
There you go.
Know what I'm saying?
I like that. Blades Brown joining us here on Main Street Sports today. Blades, does it ever hit you, man? I'm 17 years old, and I'm playing professional golf. Does that ever run through your head? What's your reaction when it does?
Well, my dad told me this saying one day. He said, "Blades, the golf ball doesn't care how old you are." And ever since I heard that, that's true. The golf ball does not know whether I'm 65 or 17. And so I can play with that mindset and learn each and every day.
That's great. We'll be looking for you in your next event. We appreciate you taking some time with us. Blades Brown, former Brentwood Academy, 3-time state golf champion, joining us here on Main Street Sports today. Out there driving for show and putting for dough, right?
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Hey, man, we appreciate you taking some time with us. Tell your mom we said hey, and good luck.
I will. Thank you guys so much for having me. That was awesome.
Thank you, Blades.
Thank you. All right.
Hi, I'm Dr. Vilay Saisuka, CEO and founder of Premier Foot and Ankle Centers of Tennessee here in Murfreesboro. We offer foot and ankle care from ingrown toenails to diabetic foot wounds. We also fix ankle fractures and things like that.
Call us today to schedule an appointment. We look forward to seeing you.
Because here at Premier Foot and Ankle, we believe that
the journey begins with happy feet.
Whether you're an athlete or a weekend warrior, when it comes to your performance, don't settle for anything less than excellence. We're proud to announce that Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint Clinic is now Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, where we are redefining sports medicine and orthopedics. Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance's team of expert sports medicine physicians understands the unique demands of your body. TOA Columbia specializes in personalized orthopedic care, offering state-of-the-art treatments for everything from sports injuries to joint replacements. Learn more at toacolumbia.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50 plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy, zioneagles.org, or 931-388-5731. You can schedule your appointment. Go tour their campus. It is beautiful over there, and you're definitely going to want to see it. Again, it's zioneagles.org. Give them a call, 931-388-5731, and schedule your tour today. Custom Stone Handler supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with River Stone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe that the measure of any person or company is how they treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStonehandlers.com.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily, as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
It's always great when we can catch up with a guy like our next guest, Russ Pulley, Nashville-based Southeastern Conference football official, among other things, joining us here, sporting his Preds gear as
Yeah.
Hope Springs Eternal. Man, you're a brave man, but Russ Pulley joining us here. Russ, we appreciate you taking some time with us, and just
My
wanted
pleasure, Maurice.
Yeah, I wanted to reach out to you because it became, it was announced, I guess, during the Pinstripe Bowl this weekend that was your last game as a college football official. And I thought, you know what? We've never had Russ Pulley on the show. We need to fix that.
Well, well, you are correct that the announcement was accurate. I decided in February of this past year that I would make this my last season, and it became official last week. So, thanks for having me on.
What prompts an official to shut it down?
Well, a lot of things, but I'm 66 years old, and when I turned 60, I started looking at each season and evaluating whether or not I would come back for another season, based on a lot of things, based on performance, based on how I feel about the season, the upcoming season, whether or not, you have the desire to come back and prepare, because preparation is a lot of preparation that goes into a season. And for me, it became one of those things where I talked about it with the boss, and I don't want to deteriorate at all. And I really didn't feel like I was deteriorating in terms of my performance, and the boss didn't either. But you don't want to get to the point where you look at your previous season and say, well, I should have left a year ago, because that's always the talk among officials. And there's also this thing in the officiating community that many people say that officials don't really know when to leave, and I didn't want them to tag me with that. So, the third component is, I work in the middle, and the NFL doesn't do that anymore, but college does, and you tend to take a little bit of a beating. And for the first time in my career, even though I made the decision in February to leave, first time in my career, I ended up getting banged up and having to miss time on the field. I broke my leg, tore my hamstring, and had a high ankle sprain at the hit at Arkansas. And so I was out for 4 weeks, and fortunately able to come back and work the last 2 games in the bowl season. But that's always a concern of mine when how much longer can I call it cheating death in there. So I was really comfortable with the fact that this would be it for me, and made that decision in February, and I feel good about it. It's a little bit bittersweet because, when you leave 25 years doing something, and it finally hits you, and it just hit me last week, then then I have to deal with that. But I'm still comfortable with the fact that I'm happy with the career and happy to be retiring, and also happy to let other officials who have been working hard to get in the Southeastern Conference. This creates a spot for somebody else as well.
It's funny that you say that specific concept right there, Russ, because, I work a lot with sports at the high school level, as does David. And we hear that people aren't getting into officiating. So, I mean, where
I got my little grandbaby over there.
I understand. Are there people coming along to fill your spot?
Yeah, well, we definitely are. We feel like we're in good shape in the immediate future. But you bring up a good point, because we need to we need to really work hard to fill the pipeline, and in some ways that is we're struggling with that at the high school level, and as we develop them moving on forward, because there really is you have to have so many agencies linked together and so many different organizations working together to get people from the beginning of an officiating career to our level into the NFL level. And there is no real organized way to go about doing that right now. So we really rely upon others who rely upon others who rely upon others to really get people in the pipeline. And I think there's a lot of steps missed along the way. For example, where we get officials, what kind of person makes a good official? Those things are often a little bit, it's an inexact science. So, but we do need, for example, ex-players tend to really understand, have a feel for the game that others don't have. So that's a really good starting point for people. So we need to really market ourselves better to ex-players than we're doing.
Russ, as members of the sports media, as fans, there's nothing like Saturdays in college football and the atmosphere and the pageantry that comes with college football, and particularly, the SEC. You've got to live that the last 25 years. What's that like? Going in some of these SEC environments, and just the crowd, the noise, the pageantry, all that, and kind of rank some of your top atmospheres, if you can recall, from your days on the field.
Christian, I'm on the phone. Well, I'll tell you, I've really been fortunate, and if you really look at the last 25 years, I really feel like that's been sort of the golden age of the SEC. Look at what the Southeastern Conference has done. Look at how many different SEC teams have been national champions, and how many times the SEC has been playing in the national championship. That tells you where the best football is. And this is a key right here. In the last Southeastern Conference officiating crew worked the national championship, it was the 2004 season. So in my entire career, I've never had the opportunity to work that game, because we don't get it. Why? Because we have teams in it. Right. And you think about how it's spread out. Your point is really well taken, because it's a great league, and we really feel like that the environment and the atmosphere and the importance of the games is really pretty incredible in the regular season. So I've been fortunate enough to work those, and it does. There's nothing like a tough, meaningful conference game. When I say that, they're all meaningful, but those where you have, like Alabama and LSU playing, going to go to the CFP. Back in the day, it was Tennessee and Florida when I first started. And you work that game with Urban Meyer and Philip Fulmer. Those were really tough games, and you knew when you were in one of those. And then you got the traditional rivalries like Georgia, Auburn, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and you go into those games, and it's a totally different kind of football game. And it doesn't matter what the score is or what's on the line. Those rivalry games will test you, and those have been really good. To the question of people often ask me what the favorite venues are. I really don't have a favorite because nearly all of our schools create a unique environment of their own. I mean, you go into LSU and there's nothing like that. A night game at LSU. My last conference game was Alabama and Auburn, and there's no better environment than that. It doesn't matter what's on the line for that game. I remember working that game when it was one of Coach Somerville's last games, and he knew he was going to take a beating. He only brought 65 players to the game, and he told us that. He said, let's get this thing over as quickly as possible. I said, Coach, there's 60 minutes on that clock. We can't rush that. And they did take a beating, but it had been a while since Alabama had won that game. And the remarkable thing to me is when a score is as lopsided as that is, typically the crowd leaves. There was nobody left, and they were screaming just as loud for the last touchdown as they did the first one. So those are kind of things that we get to experience that I think nobody else does, really. And they don't have that in the NFL. They don't have that in other leagues. They've got a little bit of it, but they don't have it. To the extent that we do. So it has been a privilege to be a part of all that and to experience it. But as an official, at the same time, we have a job to do. So, condition yourself not to get too caught up in the emotions of the environment, and you do your job and you focus on doing your job properly. So that can be a little bit of a challenge when you're first coming into the league.
Russ Pulley, longtime college football official out of Nashville, joining us here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Russ, you talked about getting folks into the pipeline for officiating. Take us through your progression from non-official to one of the SEC's finest.
Well, thank you for that. And I will. I was born as a baseball umpire into officiating. My dad was a baseball signer. So when I was basically 16 years old, he got me officiating as a baseball umpire. And that's how I broke in, earned some stripes. And what's interesting is, that was in Virginia. And my career, I was an FBI agent. And when the FBI sent me to Nashville in 1985. And when I came here, I was coaching a women's basketball team out at, Westminster Presbyterian. And I know you're going to know these names, Maurice, but Bill Harris and Doris Armstrong were the two guys who were officiating my basketball games. And they were there at every game. And we started talking. And I told them I was a baseball umpire. So they got me involved in umpiring down there in just the little leagues. And then I started calling high school ball. And then I was exposed to guys who were doing all three sports. So I did all three sports at the high school level until my son was born, and I just cut it down to football. And at that time, football was a passion of mine. I really loved doing it, and we made it a year-round thing there. We started preparation in January for the upcoming season, and never really thought about doing college ball at all. And then, a buddy of mine with whom I worked, he jumped into the college arena, and so I remember working the 97 state championship game, made the decision I was going to give that a whirl, and finally and jumped into it and started progressing. The Ohio Valley Conference hired me, and then I spent a little time 1 year in the Sun Belt, and Bobby Gaston met me and put me on his list, and 2 years later I was on his active roster. So that was my progression. Many people do it differently. But there's really no set path for anyone, but you do need to develop. In high school is a really good place to develop because you get a lot of snaps working Little League on Saturday, high school on Friday, freshman games on Thursday, middle school games on Wednesday. That's a lot of snaps that are valuable in your development stage.
Not all at the same skill level, obviously.
No, but you still learn at that level for sure.
Yes. Watching. I typically, Russ, watch sporting events with my cell phone in one hand and with my eye on the screen. But friend of the show, Ryan McGee at ESPN McGee, tweeted out Saturday, and Ryan is a friend of officials as well. His dad officiated in the Atlantic Coast Conference for a long time, but he says, good on the Pinstripe Bowl TV truck for recognizing umpire Russ Pulley working his final game after 25 years as an SEC official. He's also spent 40 plus years in public service as a firefighter, paramedic, police officer, state trooper, FBI agent, and Department of Labor investigator. It sounds like to me, Russ, that officiating is the least interesting thing you've done.
Well, that depends on who you talk to. So it seems like anytime anybody ever invites me to speak at any event, whether they want to talk about, things I did in the FBI or whatever, football seems to be the most interesting when the questions start pouring in. But I've been fortunate enough to work in areas that I really enjoyed, and that progression was fun for me. So it's been really good in both arenas.
And, just the fact that you had the opportunity to be recognized on a national level like that, I would imagine that has to mean a lot, because I know that it's not something that you get into for the recognition, but at the same time, it's sure nice to get it when it comes.
Well, yeah, I certainly don't seek that out. And I did see that. The reason I saw it is when people heard what was put out at the Pinstripe Bowl, I received quite a few comments from friends of mine and others, and they did pass that along. And that was awfully kind of Ryan McGee to do that. I'll say that for sure. That was really nice of him.
Russ, one of the great things about being an officiating, I know this, I work basketball at the high school level, is the relationships that you get to build with your comrades, your fellow officials. As you kind of reflect on that in your career, who are some people that come to mind, just the friends and relationships that you've able to build over the last 2 decades?
There's no question that's the case. I think lost prop there. Any official will tell you that the most important thing about officiating to them is the relationships and the bonds that they create with their fellow officials. Crews, they tend to be like teams when you play team sports because you really rely upon one another, and there are things you do for one another that are unmatched. You go through thick and you go through thin. I mean, we've been on crews where we had some pretty major misses, and you really sort of you gather around people when that happens. And I've been on crews where we've done really well, but you really need each other during those times, because people who don't do this, and if you've officiated, you understand this, that we don't set out to do bad things. And when it happens, it really, we're mortified by it. I mean, nobody really hurts any worse than the officiating community when we do something that's wrong. So having your comrades around is definitely helpful. But you're right. There's a lot of relationships that I cherish. And fortunately for me, I've had really good relationships with coaches and really good relationships with players.
Do you remember a miss? Is there a miss that sticks out for you?
Yeah, I remember a lot of them. I was on the crew that we took a down away from Penn State. You might remember that a couple of years ago. Auburn and Penn State, and I can walk you through the whole series of events that led up to it. But the bottom line is, they punted on 3rd down. And so when we got off the field and realized that happened, it's like, well, oops. So it ended up being a good experience for us because, I gathered, I was a veteran official at that point in time, and I gathered the troops together and said, boys, we're going to poke our chests out. We're going to take this like men, and we're not going to run from this like some do. And so we really did. We got our little suspension letter, and we got the 2 words catastrophic failure along with that letter. But we're proud of the way we handled ourselves. It was a miss, and you got to own it. So those are probably the two stories of misses. But again, I still remember a lot of them. So we could go on and on.
You raise an interesting point there, Russ, because I think a lot of fans may not necessarily realize there are repercussions.
Oh yeah, there are repercussions, and we knew they were coming. Because I'm like, you can't lose a down and not expect to get punished for it. And the coordinator, we knew it was coming. We got it. He didn't give us lashes or whatever. He knew we knew it was coming, and he gave it to us. And then we recovered from it, and everybody went on to have a great season beyond that. And it all is in how you handle it. I mean, I don't think anybody, this year, I think you can remember the big misses. And fortunately, I wasn't a part of any of them. But when they happen, and there are repercussions when they happen. It's just that they're not made public.
All right. Nashville's Russ Pulley retiring after 25 seasons of Southeastern football officiating. Russ, should we look for you on a football field sometime? Maybe at the high school level or anything like that? Or
I would doubt that I'll ever be officiating again, but I have a real passion for development. So I'm gonna try to find some role somewhere, maybe with the SEC. They won't make those decisions for another couple weeks, but I do have an interest in development and helping officials develop, and so I will find some kind of role in that arena. I don't know whether it'll be at the high school level, to college level, or where it'll be, but that'll be what I'll seek out if I don't get offered something like that.
Awesome. Russ, we appreciate it. Salute you for your service, and look forward to seeing what happens next for you, man.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. Thanks for thinking of this, and feel free to reach out to me anytime. Maurice, I've known you for a while. Your work's always very good, and we'll always enjoy seeing it. So
thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Take care.
You too. We'll catch up.
Hi, I'm Riley, a certified physician associate here at Premier Foot and Ankle Centers of Tennessee. We have a couple locations, Murfreesboro, McMinnville, as well as Franklin. We treat people of all ages. We're excited to get you back on your feet and hope we can help you today.
Call us today to schedule an appointment. We look forward to seeing you.
Because here at Premier Foot and Ankle, we believe that
the journey begins with happy feet.
You're seeing the signs too, right?
What signs?
Whether you're an athlete or a weekend warrior, when it comes to your performance, don't settle for anything less than excellence. We're proud to announce that Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint Clinic is now Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. where we are redefining sports medicine and orthopedics. Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance's team of expert sports medicine physicians understands the unique demands of your body. TOA Columbia specializes in personalized orthopedic care, offering state-of-the-art treatments for everything from sports injuries to joint replacements. Learn more at toacolumbia.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50 plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy, zioneagles.org or 931-388-5731. You can schedule your appointment. Go tour their campus. It is beautiful over there, and you're definitely going to want to see it. Again, it's zioneagles.org. Give them a call, 931-388-5731, and schedule your tour today.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily, as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Pleased to have with us now Thomas Harding of MLB.com, covers the Colorado Rockies, has done it for a long time and has done it well, and has done it long enough that he has finally earned a ballot for the Hall of Fame for the 2026 process with the Baseball Writers Association of America. So, Thomas, thanks for joining us, man. Good afternoon.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, that vote eligibility is, I guess, long in coming and should have happened many, many years ago. But the baseball writers didn't allow in MLB.com for a long time, and then you had to work 10 years to get 10 consecutive years to get the vote. So I guess I'm on my 24th year of that 10-year wait period. So
there you go. Well, better late than never, I guess. So what was it? Did they not like y'all because you were internet or because you were employed by MLB, or what was that?
It was a combination of both, and at times it seemed like the standards changed. There were some carefully written rules to keep us out until we were in there. So I guess we're all one big happy family now.
10 consecutive years with the same publication on the same beat. What exactly is that?
Their rule is 10 consecutive years in their organization. So you're covering Major League Baseball and you've been deemed a member of their organization.
Okay. All right. Well, congratulations. You got 2.5 times their requirements. So well worth it, I guess. When the announcement was made Tuesday of Ichiro, CC, and Billy Wagner, what was your reaction to that? Was that about the way you expected it to go down? Was there anybody that didn't get in that you expected, or what? Just what was your reaction?
Well, it was exactly the way it went down. I was very happy for Billy Wagner, who actually grew up not far from where I grew up. And one of his high school coach, one of the very influential people, was a guy I knew very well. His family and my family all knew each other, so it was a really good time to see. Ichiro, I was hoping it would be unanimous, but someone decided that it wouldn't be. Ichiro is one of the best baseball players I've ever seen, maybe the best at putting the ball in play and putting the ball in play hard that I've seen as far as line drives and things like that. He could adjust his swing to anything. And CC Sabathia, I think that in this modern era of starting pitching where it's fewer innings, fewer wins, and you're really trying to kind of figure it out, he was one of the last of the old school, so I'm happy to see him get in.
Yeah, felt like three worthy candidates. To your point, Mo and I discussed it yesterday on the show, Thomas. Ichiro, whoever's got that secret omission, it almost feels like they're keeping some. I don't know if they're going to release that on a rainy day or if they're doing that for some notoriety. But man, it feels like we got shortchanged a little bit with Ichiro not going in unanimously.
Well, I think there is also this thought among some baseball writers, and it's a very old thought, that nobody deserves to be unanimous. Hank Aaron wasn't unanimous. I mean, come on. Sometimes people, I think, use their vote, and you can use the vote any way you want. So this is just my opinion. It's almost like a Revenge of the Nerds thing. Like, I've got power now, so I'm going to use it.
Yeah, and that was the sentiment that I was just getting ready to say. It almost felt like a little bit of a I can wield this and you can't type vibe, depending on who that person might be and what their preferences are.
Yeah, well, and the rules are actually intentionally vague so people can choose however they want to do it. I mean, there's a whole group of people from the steroids era that they're on the ballot and they're eligible. So how do you deal with that? There's no real guideline about dealing with it. It's intentionally vague so that the people that have covered this sport and written about this sport can kind of make their own decisions on that, whether you agree or not.
And I can see the thought process because, like you said, Hank Aaron wasn't unanimous. Willie Mays wasn't unanimous. Guys like that weren't unanimous. So why should anybody be? But
the question is, why weren't they unanimous?
That's the better question, but that's not fixable at this point. But, I guess once Mariano Rivera kind of broke the seal on that, then it's kind of over with, man. I mean, it almost looks worse. Like, I mean, this guy or whoever this voter was apparently isn't going to be identified, and for obvious reasons, I guess. But
and I'm not sure on this because, frankly, having been not included for a long time, I really haven't paid a lot of attention to it. But I do believe that they end up releasing the votes unless you ask for them not to be released. I'll have to find that out next year. These are, and sometimes I think that you look at maybe there's some organizations and there are some news organizations that do not allow their reporters to vote on things like the most valuable player or whatever, because they feel like the reporter becomes part of the story. I get that, but I also think that's a bit of posturing. So I don't know if this particular person's vote will be out there, but when it does come out there, maybe they'll defend it, or maybe they'll just say, hey, my vote is my vote, and you can say what you want on social media.
And either is, permissible. Like you said, it's your vote. You can do what you want to with it, but there's going to be a little notoriety to go with it should it be known who it was. So we can look forward to that. Beltran and Andrew Jones, first two out, as they like to say with the NCAA tournament. What are your thoughts about those two guys and their prospects going forward, again, as a voter in the 2026 process?
Carlos Beltran, I think, deserves a lot of consideration. My first thought, and I don't vote on, for most years I voted on the Cy Young. Sometimes, last year I voted on a different award. I usually reserve most of the comments on that until the time to vote, because what I like to do is really study it. But just off the top of my head, Carlos Beltran is a lot closer to my vote. He's a guy that I would think, I'm probably going to vote for. Andrew Jones, he's a guy, especially the prime of his career. And I'm very strong on the prime of your career, where he was the best center fielder in the game, and in a lot of people's eyes, the best center fielder of that entire era, not just when he played. He's a guy I would probably lean toward. I don't know right now. I know that there's some, I guess on both of them, there are some knocks. Carlos Beltran, obviously, the sign stealing scandal, which that doesn't bother me very much. And I think that with Andrew Jones, there was a long period of his career where he was hurt and he declined, but it doesn't take away the height of his career. So those are two guys that I look at and say, okay, they're pretty close, and maybe, I'll really look hard at them, probably going into it thinking, they get my vote.
Devil's advocate for just a second. If you were to not vote for Andrew Jones, why would you not? And obviously, anybody that listens to this show for any period of time knows I'm a Braves fan, and I had a put Andrew in the HOF hashtag a couple of days ago. But I mean, what do you feel like? I mean, other than the decline, and I don't know.
That's exactly it.
I think you just said it. I don't know how you let the decline take away from the peak.
Right.
I don't understand the logistics to that.
Well, a lot of players, they'll look at the peak and say that wasn't enough, that you wanted greatness over a longer period of time. So that's where that comes in. Now with Andrew Jones, he stayed around, he played through some injuries in his career, and let's face it, guys get a lot of money. I don't know that you punish them for staying around, for teams wanting them to be a part of them at the end of their careers. But the Andrew Jones, that seems to be the biggest knock on him. However, he is inched toward it, so a lot of people believe that, especially based on his dominance in center field and also in that Atlanta lineup for a long period of time, that maybe he is a Hall of Famer. So I'm looking at you look at the vote totals, and it seems that a lot of people think he is one.
Are you concerned with time running out on him? Next year will be his next to last year on the ballot, and he's at 66.2% this time around.
What I find is that guys who are close to the end, and I dealt with that with Todd Helton and with Larry Walker, that there is a bump toward them. Also, guys like that, they usually get a very big push from their teams and from the sabermetric community. So what happens is the voters really get to spend more time looking at their numbers. Did they get to be a better player? No, they didn't get to be a better player because they've been retired for 15 years now. But I think that especially when you get to the end and there's a lot of attention, then maybe you have the opportunity as a voter to look at it again. And maybe those who are pulling for you, often it's your team. It's your team's media relations group. It's members of the sabermetric community that keep looking and looking and looking at these stats over and over and over again. Probably not the most fun guys at parties, but guys who can really help you assess a guy's career. I think that those things work in your favor toward the end of your time on the ballot.
Thomas, you mentioned the steroids era earlier. Can't go too far in that discussion without mentioning A-Rod. And Alex Rodriguez gets 37.1% of the vote. There's a New York Post article that said he's stuck in Hall of Fame purgatory with no chance of getting out. To me, that sounds like he's stuck in Hall of Fame hell, but I get the sentiment there. So I'm curious, is there a path with still 6 years of eligibility for A-Rod to maybe make a case down the road in your mind?
Well, if you look at the group of voters, there are some that are voting for him, some that aren't. Now, when they put in that whole group of folks from MLB.com who have been around for at least, 10 years now?
At least.
Yeah, exactly. At least. For many of us, it's at least. Then, does this group of voters come in with a different attitude toward the steroids era? That I think that would be the big question for someone like an A-Rod. Does he get an immediate bump and then continue to work toward being voted into the Hall of Fame? I don't know, because I haven't talked to everybody about it. Everybody has their own feelings about it. My personal feeling, and people will yell at me over it, is I have a hard time knocking people from the steroids era. Now, I understand A-Rod's situation, the fact that he was caught after testing. That does put things in a little bit different perspective. However, there were wonderful players that, yes, they used or probably used steroids. But here's my question. When you look at them, say a guy hit a whole lot of home runs and he had a steroid cloud, which is, let's just hypothetically say Barry Bonds, okay? At that time, especially if you look at the Mitchell report, it was widespread throughout the game. Here's my question. Has anyone ever taken each home run and said, did this come off of a non-steroid user? Did this come off of a steroid user? There are steroid users at all positions, pitchers, position players, or whatever. Until you do that and say, well, we think he cheated on these home runs, it was the game. It was this museum honors the game in its eras. It shows who the best players were under the rules that were played. There was a brief period early in the game where ground rule doubles, what we call them now, were home runs. So that's my feeling on the steroids era.
Thomas Harding of MLB.com joining us here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Thomas, you talked about teams and sabermetrics groups and that kind of thing kind of getting on folks as bandwagons later in their Hall of Fame candidacy. Sometimes teammates get on your bandwagon as well, as in Chipper Jones, who tweeted, I want to ask all HOF voters one question. If Andrew Jones plays for the New York Yankees for 15 years with 10 gold gloves, 400 home runs, 1,300 RBIs. Is he an HOFer? Let me answer for you. First ballot. Time to have a conversation about HOFers chiming in. 75 living members can make sure it's right. Now, his support for Andrew aside, why don't living Hall of Famers have a vote? You know, you see this with the Heisman process where Heisman Trophy winners have a vote on going forward the Heisman Trophy. I mean, it kind of makes sense to me. Who knows better than somebody who's in the Hall what it takes to be in the Hall?
You know, there's an argument for that. Now, and I will put this, Dave Parker finally got in this year. When I was covering a lot of the minors and some of the majors, when people talked about Dave Parker, I'm talking about the contemporaries in the game, they said, this guy's a future Hall of Famer. He didn't get in with the writers voting. He got in on one of those era committees that did allow former players in. I think that the way that the Hall of Fame is set up, and frankly, the way the Baseball Writers Association, if you look at what I've been describing, it's a very powerful organization. I personally believe that the organization should be powerful because the access of reporters is always something that they have to fight for. But this is part of maintaining power, like the broadcasters. Vin Scully never had a vote for the Hall of Fame, but it is under the Hall of Fame's rules, the BBWAA that vote for the Hall in this particular phase. They do have other phases that they allow former players in. I just don't know. You would almost have to obliterate all the rules that have existed forever for the Hall of Fame and come up with a new voting procedure. So while there is an argument for it, I understand why it is the way it is.
Makes sense. You and I chatted a couple of days ago as we were setting up your appearance today. Again, you've got a vote in the 26 process. And as Wade and I said when we were talking about this yesterday, the 26 first timers aren't particularly an inspiring group.
Right. Yeah, I am not sure exactly, from the newcomers, here's the thing that's going to happen. And I feel like maybe this is where the guys that you necessarily don't want at your parties are going to come into it. Starting pitching, it is very hard to rank, to figure out exactly how to rank these guys against history because starting pitching has changed so much. There are so many fewer innings. There are teams, and this has taken a couple of decades to de-emphasize the win as a very important thing for a starting pitcher. So my question will be, when we look at the Cole Hamels and Mark Burleys and Madison Bumgarners, how are we going to compare them against past eras? Or do we compare them against past eras? Do we look at the best players in the current era? So that will be, when you look at maybe not the most exciting group of people coming onto the ballot next year, I think that'll be the question that will be asked repeatedly. I know I was at actually a wedding this weekend, and there was a broadcaster, and she was discussing how low the percentage of starting pitchers that are in the Hall of Fame, and it's going to get lower. Is that really is that really a good representation of the game when we have an era where almost no starting pitchers have the numbers that compare to the past?
Thomas, speaking of starting pitchers, another guy on this list, yeah, he's known for his career and, all the World Series championships with the Yankees. But how about Astros legend Andy Pettitte? I'm reading some comparisons that say that he maybe is trending kind of toward like a Larry Walker, where he might be cutting it real close, but there might be a groundswell to get him in maybe in his final year or two on the ballot. He's still got a few remaining.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we go back to the Chipper Jones question. He pitched a whole lot for the New York Yankees. And there are a whole lot of voters who covered the New York Yankees. And there are voters. I mean, I remember years ago where one voter actually said publicly that Roberto Alomar, he withheld Roberto Alomar's Hall of Fame vote because he didn't play well when he played for the New York Mets for a year or two. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. But the New York bump will help him. I think that when I go back and I look at that era, and I remember watching World Series and some of the things that he did, to me, he trends toward the Hall of Fame now. Now, when the guys that, okay, let's invite him to the party, but they're in the, just like they're in the corner talking about Hall of Fame percentages here. I do wonder, when this is examined and re-examined, could Andy Pettitte be kind of a test case for people, at least of his era, if not this era, to see what's a Hall of Famer? What's the definition of a starting pitcher who's a Hall of Famer?
There was a guy that I hadn't thought about, and I didn't realize time has slipped away. But it's good to know that he potentially has a few more. But I was fascinated, and that's what made me think of it when you mentioned the starting pitching, because it is an interesting breakdown going forward as we kind of continue to move further toward the present with these guys.
Thomas, when you mentioned the Yankee impact, it reminded me of the legendary Beano Cook, who once said so famously, you have to play for Notre Dame or play well against Notre Dame to have a shot at winning the Heisman. And it feels, when you said that, it kind of lined up for me. That suddenly makes a lot of sense in this situation as well. Thomas Harding of MLB.com covers the Rockies for 24 years. Time flies when you're having fun, right?
That's right. It's fun. I'm still young, I think. Well, maybe I'll have to check my shoulder, my ankle, whatever, but I'm still young. So yes.
There we go. Man, we appreciate you taking some time with us. Look forward to getting you on again soon.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, and hey, good luck with your budding uniform design career.
I'm having a fun time with that. I've got 2 in the hopper now that are being approved at different stages. So still working. Hey, anybody in the mid-state of Tennessee, let me know. I'll help you design your uniform or your football or baseball helmet. So yeah, enjoy.
There we go.
We know a guy, so hit us up. Thomas, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Whether you're an athlete or a weekend warrior, when it comes to your performance, don't settle for anything less than excellence. We're proud to announce that Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint Clinic is now Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, where we are redefining sports medicine and orthopedics. Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance's team of expert sports medicine physicians understands the unique demands of your body. TOA Columbia specializes in personalized orthopedic care, offering state-of-the-art treatments for everything from sports injuries to joint replacements. Learn more at toacolumbia.com.
You're seeing the signs too, right?
What signs?
Join us as we visit communities, learn about art and culture, take in some good food, and have candid conversations with those behind nonprofits and fun events. That and more here at Mornings on Main Street, starting at 8.
I hadn't forgot that. You know what they say, let's go Strokes.
People are amazed at the variety and quality of guests we bring into Main Street Sports today. But when you've been in this business for nearly 40 years and you never throw away a phone number, it's pretty easy. Right, Wade?
Absolutely.
And Wynn agrees with me.
Check out some of our guests featured on Main Street Sports today.
Step back and catch my breath.
But I expect nothing less from you, big boy. Let's get going.
We make it work pretty good. So
the fans are tremendous.
It's fantastic.
It was really amazing.
They call it performance. Yeah.
From preps to pros, you never know who's going to stop by, so be sure to listen to and watch Main Street Sports today from 2 to 4 p.m. daily on the MSM TV app.